Today I'm going to show you how to make mother's pudding from scratch. Mother's pudding, in case you don't know, is one of the recipes in our puppy culture workbook. This is the spiral bound version. It's on page 22, and I'm going to pull it out here from the 3-ring binder so that we have it. Okay. This is the recipe that's in our workbook. The problem is this recipe calls for pudding mix, which we have found out is not called pudding mix everywhere. In some places it's called custard mix, not pudding mix, and in many places it's not readily available. So that's why I'm just going to show you how to make it from scratch. It's easy, it doesn't require a lot of ingredients, anybody can do it. Now, we also have come up with a recipe card for this from scratch recipe. I'm going to be following this. It is available to you. All you have to do is log into your My Puppy Culture account on our website. It's there for everyone. So, let's get started. Let's look at ingredients. You're going to need a thickener. We're using cornstarch. Now, the thing about cornstarch is that it's called corn flour in some parts of the world. And the thing that's even more confusing is that there's corn flour and corn flour, which are two different things. One is like cornstarch and one is more of a meal, what we would call cornmeal, that you would use to make biscuits or muffins. So what you want is the corn flour that is like a powder. It's almost like confectioner's sugar consistency. So that's the one that you want. So there's that. You're going to have sugar. Then you're going to have eggs. Regarding the eggs, if you have pasture-raised eggs, that's really good because these eggs are going to have a lot more nutrients and they're just going to be a lot healthier and better. But you know what? Store-bought eggs are fine. These are store-bought eggs. We're going to use just the yolks, and I'll show you how to separate yolks in case you don't know. And then we're also going to use goat milk. This is 4 cups of goat milk. It is almost a liter, and I think a liter is fine, it's close enough. If you want to get really, really picky, it's like 950 milliliters, but it's close enough to just use a liter. We're not cooking for a 4-star restaurant here, we're making something for dogs. Now, about the goat milk, a lot of us buy it and freeze it. And it's important when you defrost it that you defrost it quickly in hot water, because otherwise it can tend to, when I say quickly in hot water, let me just clarify, I don't mean to dump the actual milk into hot water. You put the container in a vat of hot water, and so it will melt quickly. And the reason you do that is so it doesn't curdle and separate. If it does curdle and separate, it's really not a big deal. You can still make the pudding with it. It's not going to affect it, except the consistency won't be right, but you know what, you're cooking for a dog, so they don't really care. You do want to smell it if it's curdled and make sure it's not curdled because it's bad, but 9 times out of 10, I've actually never had my goat milk go bad in the freezer, but often it will separate. So there's that. Now, here's our stuff, because I already measured it out. You're also going to have vanilla in there. And now I'm going to show you actually how to mix it up. So let's start making the pudding. All right, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put my eggs in. 4 egg yolks. These are probably large to extra large sized eggs, but it really doesn't matter that much what size you use. Anything from jumbo to large would be fine. By the way, when you're separating these eggs, and I am going to show you how to do that at the end, you don't have to worry about getting every last little tiny bit of white out. I know there is a concern about giving raw egg whites because they can deplete biotin, but this is going to be cooked, so if there is a little bit of egg white left, it doesn't matter. The reason really why you're doing it this way is just to get the richness and the caloric content. That's why you take the whites out. So, okay, that's mixed up pretty well. Then I'm going to throw the milk in. mix that in. And I'm using a whisk. I mean, you could use a fork if you want. A whisk is a nice tool to have, but you could use a fork. Again, it's not haute cuisine. Okay, so now I spilled a little. I'm going to put in my, how much is it? Tablespoon of vanilla. The vanilla is in there for the flavor. It makes it more palatable. Okay, so now I've got all my liquid stuff mixed in. And then this is sugar. You'll need 2/3 of a cup of sugar. I put the salt in there too. You just put a pinch, like a, what is it called for? Half a teaspoon of salt. And again, it's really just for palatability. You could leave it out if you want to. That's the cornstarch or corn flour if you're in Europe. You'll need 6 tablespoons of cornstarch. Okay, that looks good. Let's cook it. Okay, so I'm going to say a few things about the cooking process. I really can't tell you how long you have to cook it or specifically what temperature to cook it at because so many variables come into play. I happen to have a high BTU stove, so my medium is like most people's high. I'm also using a cast iron pot, which I do highly recommend. It's an enameled cast iron pot, just because it gives a really even heat and tends not to scald or burn as easily. So my cooking process is going to be different than if you're using a thin bottomed, aluminum pan or something like that. You don't have to have this. You can cook it in any saucepan. What you do have to be careful, especially if you're using a thinner bottom pan, is to really keep stirring it constantly. So what I'll do is I'm going to cook it and I'm just going to show you when it's done, and how long that takes is going to vary depending on all these different factors. So let me just turn this up. I'm going to put it on between medium and low on my stove. I'm going to just pour this right in. And then I'm going to start stirring. So here's the thing. If you are making pudding for human consumption, where you really care a lot about the texture, you would do something called tempering. So you would take a little bit of the hot liquid and mix it in with the eggs to slowly bring the eggs up to the temperature of the warm liquid. And what that does is it keeps the eggs from curdling. I mean, I've never really had this curdle doing it this way, but even if it did, it doesn't matter. It's for dogs. They like it anyway. So if you want to do that extra step of tempering your eggs, go right ahead. But for this instance, it's really not necessary. Okay, so now that it's a little bit warmer than room temperature, I've actually turned up the heat to between medium and high. So now I'm on a medium-high heat. But you want to start it slow in the beginning so you don't get that curdling. So the thing to know about this is you do have to stir it continually, and you're going to be looking at it and thinking it's not thickening, it's not thickening. But when it changes, it's like that. It just goes from being almost completely liquid to pudding consistency really quickly, and if you're not on top of it and stirring it, it will burn on the bottom. So see, this is starting to get a little tiny bit thicker. Here it goes. See, it's starting to coat the side of the pan. Here it comes. There it is, just about there. Now I'm just going to let it boil a little bit, see how it's boiling a little bit. I'm going to stir it just to make sure that cornstarch actually gets cooked so you don't have that. I mean, not that it matters to the dog so much, but it will give it kind of a chalky taste. So there it is. Done. And that's about the consistency. It will thicken up a lot. I'll get a spoon so that you can see this. See that? It will thicken up a lot when you chill it, and it will be like a regular custard or pudding. And that's it. That's how easy it is. So I'm going to make two observations about this. We do mention this on the recipe card, but I'm just going to bring it up. The sugar. The thing about the sugar is you really have to judge based on your bitch's need how much sugar you want to put in. If you have a bitch that had one puppy in a routine whelping, she probably doesn't need a lot of sugar. If you had a bitch that has 12 or 14 puppies, she needs all the calories humanly possible to get into her. So how much sugar you put, you can adjust. It can cause excitability, especially in small bitches. So again, look out for that. The other thing about sugar is it's an osmotic laxative, meaning to say it brings water into the colon and it can cause loose stools. Now, bitches tend to have loose stools anyway after they whelp. It's natural, it's part of nature's clean out. But sometimes if you add an osmotic laxative on top of that, it can cause even more liquidy stools. You really have to judge how bad the situation is, but if it's bothering you, you can either cut out or cut way back the sugar, or you can add 2 to 4 cups of canned pumpkin per batch, and that will bring in some fiber that will firm up the stool. So there's that. Now, the other thing that I promised you is I'm going to show you how to separate an egg. So let me do that. I'm going to grab an egg over here. Okay, like I said, you don't have to go crazy trying to get every last little bit of white out of there, but you just have to crack it. And that's how you divide an egg. You just use the shell that way. And there's your egg. So that egg is separated. I'll just put this in here because we don't need it. That's how you separate an egg, and that's it. Just to recap, if you go to My Puppy Culture and log into your account, the recipe for this is there. The original recipe, which involves the boxed pudding mix, is in the Puppy Culture workbook on page 22. So whichever one works for you, but now you know how to make homemade mother's pudding from scratch.